Hello and welcome to a Working with ArcGIS Pro video. Today we're going to be looking at using the join command and also field calculator to normalize some data. All the work being done is with ArcGIS Pro 2.5 and has been tested with that version. So to start our project, what we'll need to do is add some data, and what I've done is download some data from ArcGIS Online, the US counties, and then some COVID case data for the state of Missouri. So I'll go ahead and add those two to my project. And the package file from ArcGIS Online contains two sets of county boundaries. I think today I'm just going to work with the over 1.3 million scale data, so I'll get rid of the more detailed data. I can still look at the attribute file of this data if need be. And in fact, I'm just using the state of Missouri today, so I don't really need the entire United States. I've got Alabama and all 50 states in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is isolate just the counties that I need to work with. This is going to simplify the geometry that I'm working with, and then it's also going to reduce the overhead for any processing that I might want to do. So a simple select by attributes command allow me to select my layer and then build a new expression based on the state name is equal to, and then from my drop down I'll want to select Missouri. Those records are selected, and then as a final step I'm going to make my own data layer since I don't want to really make any adjustments or changes to the data that I downloaded from ArcGIS Online. So I'll take that selection set and export those features. Give it a name. That layer is then added to my map, and I can remove the master layer or the original layer as it's no longer needed. I'm also going to change the symbology on this to just be black outline so it's a little bit easier to see the geometries. We'll zoom to that layer and we have our Missouri County map. Now the next thing I want to do is look at the attribute table for my county layers and see what I'm able to work with. And I see there's some information in here related to the county name and also the population of the county, both a 2017 estimate and then the population from the 2010 decennial census. There's many other attributes in this file that are accompanied the county data, but for today we're just going to be interested in these population numbers. And the reason we're interested in those population numbers is we want to normalize our COVID-19 case count data on a county level, and so we're going to normalize to per 100,000, and in order to do that we need the population of the county. So before we get to that step, the next thing that we need to do is look at our attribute table coming over from the Health and Human Services group at the state of Missouri, and they are providing these case updates. And so here we have the county name, we have the number of cases, the number of deaths if available, and some additional information here broken out by demographic. For this exercise we're just going to be looking at the number of cases, and so what we need to do is connect the data out of this attribute table or just a comma separated file that you might have produced from Excel and connect that over to our geography so that we're able to use those data together. So the way we would do that is initiate our join from our counties level, our layer rather, and we want to go to the joins and add a join. So from here we want to make sure that we're picking the same field in both tables. So in the Missouri Counties file I see that the name of the county is stored in an attribute called name, and then in my COVID-19 file I want to be able to go ahead and select the same field, name. Now these don't necessarily have to be the same name, but in this case they happen to be, and we want to keep all of our features. So we'll run that. And from there, if things have worked well, we should be able to see the results of our join are now all populated in our layer file. So here's our number of cases now available with counties. Now, one thing I want to make sure that I look at here before I go any further is to make sure I've got the results that I expected to get. And what I mean by that is we want to scan down through all of our county names and make sure that we're not in a situation where we're getting nulls for any of the values that would have been created as a result of the join. And so if we scroll over and look at our linked data, we should see that everything has a county name associated with it, and we should also have a number of cases. Now here I'm seeing some nulls, and if I highlight those nulls and come back and try to figure out what happened here, I'm not even getting a county name, and that's usually a red flag that something's happened in terms of a mismatch during the join process. So I'll scroll back over to the left and I'll look at what my county name should have been. And so I'm seeing here St. Charles, St. Clair, St. Genevieve, St. Francis, and St. Louis County. And the one thing I note immediately that all these have in common is they have punctuation. There's a period for the abbreviation of saint in each case. And I can verify with my COVID data by going back to its attribute table and find some of these same counties and see what the spelling for those counties might have been inside my data that I obtained from Health and Human Services. So if we look here, we can see St. Clair, but it doesn't have the period. St. Genevieve, no period. St. Francis, no period. And so ArcGIS Pro is interpreting these as being different values. Even though we're spelling them the same, the omission of the punctuation is causing us some problems. So the easiest way to fix that is to change one or the other. And since we're working with the county data, my recommendation is going to be to fix it here and not to fix it in the data that's coming from the CSV. Now, why would I say that? I think it's important to note here that, well, in this case, given the nature of the data, the COVID case data coming from Health and Human Services, we'll probably get updates from that. And so if I don't change it in my shapefile or in my feature class, then I'm going to be faced with the reality that I have to change it every single time new data come in. And so I think it's probably easier to do that, just do it once here, and then we'll be done with it. So when I look at the values in my attribute table, I see that there is punctuation on the shapefile or on the feature class that I downloaded from ArcGIS Online. And in my COVID data, I see that there are no punctuation marks within the name of the county. So what I'm going to do is within my Missouri counties file, I'm going to come in to my edit session and remove that punctuation so that we get a one-to-one match for each of our counties. So all of my data are linked up now through the join, and I can verify that by looking at my attribute table on the join data. So cases are right here, and I should no longer have any nulls within the table. Now, since we've joined this data together, our next step is that we can symbolize our counties based on any information out of an attribute table. So if we go to our symbology and we indicate that we want to use graduated colors, for example, we can pick our cases attribute out of our attribute table and symbolize our map in that way. So we'll change that from our population over to the number of COVID cases in 5 groupings. Now, the default classification method in ArcGIS is natural breaks that looks for the natural way that your data set between your max and min want to break out. But that's almost never quite exactly what you're after. It tends to produce some unnatural groupings in terms of interval And moreover, none of this data has been normalized yet. So if we want to normalize our data by, say, the 2017 population, we can certainly do that, but oftentimes the numbers that are produced as a result of that are not numbers that are going to make a lot of sense to your map readers. And so one of the ways that we can get around this problem is to utilize this normalization, and we can see that we're taking the number of cases, dividing that by the population, and then we may want to standardize that information by, say, a value of per 100,000 people or something along those lines. So let's add a new field to our table. And we'll come about doing that process. So in our Missouri counties, we see that we have our attribute table, but we have this problem that our field add is grayed out right now. It says that the project has unsaved edits or the table is schema is read-only. Now there are a couple of reasons that that might be happening. The easy reason is to say, well, did we save our edits? And we can double check that and make sure that we do save all of our edits. And that frees up the command so that we can add our table. There are some other reasons that that might be locked, as if someone else has the file open, or for some other reason a process has that field locked, or that file locked. So we're going to add a new variable called rate. We're going to store a decimal value in that field, so we want to make sure that we pick a data type of double. That'll allow us to store our decimals, and it will be a numeric value, so we can go ahead and set that. And we want to bring those number of decimal places down to 2. Rarely should you be using 6 decimal places whenever you're talking about rates, and especially as they relate to people. So we've got all of these items added to our fields. We want to save that, and we should be able to see those changes now in our table once it's saved by going out to the very far end of our table, and we have a new value called rate. Now we want to use this cases divided by population as part of our rate, but we also want to then standardize that or normalize it per 100,000. So when we initiate field calculator, we're going to select cases divided by population, but before we do that, we want to have a grouping so that we can multiply in the same equation. So I'll open my bracket, pick my first variable, which is going to be our case count, double click. Our operator here is going to be divide or division, and our denominator will be our population from 2017. At that point, I'm going to close my bracket, and then I'm going to multiply that value by 100,000. Once I'm happy with my equation, then I can run that. We have a successful run, and if we come back to our table, we should be able to see our values. Which are now over here and shown. So we have a rate that's shown as a calculated value based on the case, based on the population in 2017 per 100,000. And so if I look at this value for the second value, I can read this as 12.98 cases per 100,000 for our county right here. Now this is a better way to symbolize your map as standardized data, and so we'll come back to our symbology for Missouri counties, and now we'll change our field that we're using to rate, and since our rate is already standardized per 100,000, we do not need our normalization value in here any longer. So we'll change this back to none. And we're still on natural breaks. If I want to break that rate out into normalized bin values, I can select my normalized bins in a quantile or quartile method. So this is a frequency count. And now I can see that information over here, and to kind of finish things up, I may want to come into my table of contents and just expand on my explanation. By adding the per 100,000. Close our attribute tables, look at our map, and I could finish my map with labeling, with my layout, with county names, and so forth. So this concludes this tutorial on using the join function and creating normalized data.